The text comparison tool in Logos is useful for examining the similarities and differences of Bible translations. This feature can link as many Bible translations as you have in Logos, or it can be used with a small number, depending on what you're looking for. Today we will look at the text comparison tool and build a layout that helps maximize its use. I have windows open from the last time I was in Logos that I don't want open this time, so I'm going to close them all quickly. You can do this by clicking on these little X's here on all the tabs, or you can type in close all and hit enter. Now everything's closed. Now that I have a blank Logos workspace, I'm going to click on Tools, Text Comparison. Now, for me, it comes up on the right and it comes up very small. I don't want it there. Instead, I want to put it over here on the left side, and it'll readjust to be half of my layout. The text comparison has two main bars to type into. The first is the Bible text bar, where right now it says Genesis 1, 1 through 15. I'm going to change that to Genesis 1, 5 through 7. And then the right bar here is where you actually pick which translations you will have open. Right now, it's defaulting to showing most versions. That's just what Logos does, but I want to change that. And so to do this, I click here, I click delete or backspace, and then I choose the versions I would like to have. And so for now, I'm going to choose ESV. So I type in ESV, comma, KJV, then I'm going to hit enter because it's the 1900, and then NKJV, and then NASB 95, and then RSV. Then I hit enter. So now I have those translations, and there's these 5 translations. You can see now where before they were all going down, now they're going in columns. So this is all ESV, all KJV, all NKJV. So the reason I picked these translations is because they're all considered formal translations. Formal translations are translations where the original purpose was to follow the original text as much as possible. They are translated into English with the goal of preserving the original language as much as possible. These Bibles are sometimes more difficult to read for us because they do not attempt to make the text easier to understand for the modern reader unless they have to. We'll look at the other type of translation momentarily, but first we are going to look at the last 2 tools in the text comparison, and those are these 2 A's. The first is the show differences, and the second is the show base text. So right now the show differences is highlighted, and when that's highlighted, I'm going to unhighlight it. When it's unhighlighted, the text is all just here side by side. When it's highlighted, the differences are made in blue. And so the way the text comparison tool works is whatever text you have, or whatever translation you have in the far left, so the ESV, it compares all of the other translations to that. And so the ESV starts with God, the KJV starts with and God, and so there's a immediate difference there, and you can see that's blue. If you can't see it in the video, if you open up Logos and do this, you'll be able to tell. But you can see down here all of the changes, the font color is blue rather than black. The other tool, the show base text, allows you to add the ESV text into the other translations. And so where, looking here, it says, and there was evening, it's hard to read this, but, and there was evening and there was morning is the ESV, and then the KJV is, and the evening and the morning were the first day. It's hard to read it like that, but what it shows you is it shows you where the differences occur and how they occur. And so, and a real simple example is the ESV does not translate God when he's a pronoun with a capital letter, but the NKJV does, and so does the NASB. But if you find a word, you might find a word later on, right, like firmament down here. In the ESV, it's expanse. In 3 of the translations, it says a firmament. And so you see that there, and you see the difference in each of those. And so I generally have the show differences up, and I like to have the show base text up. If I'm looking at a larger text, if I was to be doing the Genesis 1 through 15, I may not use that, but this is useful because you can also, with that, you can see how much text was really changed. So as you'll see, the further down, some of these translations have some pretty big changes from each other. One thing to note real quick before we look at the other type is that the text comparison tool is dynamic. The more space the text comparison tool has, the clearer it looks for the user. And so if you make it bigger, it gets easier to read. You can also, if you go full screen, I'm going to go back, but you can also change the text size. So if you, let's say you wanted to have 7 or 8 translations up and they weren't all fitting in columns, you would just click here and click on the text size. You can also, you'll see I can get pretty big before it starts to get unwieldy for me, but I generally keep it about there. So now we are going to create a second window for the text comparison tool. In Logos, anything that you're using, any of the tools here, you can have more than one. So last week we looked at the compare pericope tool. Let's say you wanted to have that open, and while you were looking at that, you also wanted to look at the version river, the morphological river. You could open a second passage analysis window and open that separately so you can see them at the same time. Or if you were doing Bible word studies, you can have as many open as your computer can handle. So I'm going to click on text comparison. Now we get that second window. Again, it defaults to that tiny thing. Now I add that, and now it resizes to be the same. And right away, I'm going to change the type. Right now it's defaulting to the formal translation, and now we're going to use functional translations. So the functional translations, where the formal translations were trying to keep the original text and just translate it into English, but stay to the original text as much as possible, the functional text, if it translates into English and it's kind of confusing for the modern reader, they're going to try and smooth it over. It doesn't mean that they're trying to change the text, but it does mean that they are making choices to try and clarify where they think it does not easily read in English. And so the key thing here is we don't want to compare the functional and the formal together because they have different purposes. And so if you're looking in the ESV and you see it has a verb a certain way, if you look in the NIV and you say, oh, it's way different, well, the NIV translators may have translated it in a way to help us as modern readers. So we just need to be aware of that. So for our functional translations, I'm going to choose the NIV, the HCSB, the NLT, and the NET. The NET Bible is kind of a special one, but it does read as a functional translation. We'll look at that more later. But for now, I've got the NIV, HCSB, the NLT, and the NET. Now, the tools are the same here, but now we can look and we can see when people were trying to translate more rigid or more strict in the formal, we can see how they translated. And then in the functional, where they tried to kind of update it and make it clear for us, we can see how they translate, and we've got them side by side. Something else we can do here to make it easier to see this in Logos is we can change, or we can link these two windows. So let's say I was reading this and I noticed something that I wanted to look at in Genesis 50 verse 3. It's a random verse, but it's what I chose. But so if I click on there, now I have to go over here and I have to click Genesis 53. And I did it wrong. But I have to type it in and then hit enter. That's not a ton of typing, but it adds up. And so a way we can do this is if we click on the text comparison icon, the two arrows going left and right, and then there's an option called link set. If I click on A and then go into the other and click on A as well, these two tabs are now linked. So now if I go back to Genesis 1, 5 through 7, and click enter, both windows go there. This is especially useful if you have, let's say you have a commentary open, another Bible, if you have any resources. You can do this with just about anything that has a way to look it up by Bible verse. So that's something that I like to use whenever I have multiple resources. I like to link everything together. You can even do, you could link some stuff to A and then some stuff to B if you wanted. You have room with that. So this layout that we're at right now is very useful. It's got the formal and functional side by side. And the last thing I want to do is I want to be able to get back to this point without having to re-open the window, re-type in all the resources, re-link everything. And so there's a really simple way to do that, and that's to create a layout. Now if I click up in the right corner on layout, the top layout, yours may not look like this. You probably don't have many layouts yet, but the top resource always says now on the right. And then it says save as named layout. So I click on save as named layout, and then I'm going to type in text comparison layout fall 2015 and hit enter. Now it shows up over here, and now this is saved in Logos. So if I were to go and type in close all again, and then come up to layouts, and go to, I just lost it, go to text comparison layout fall 2015, the layouts open up. The one important thing to note here is that if you had a bunch of things open that you were using and then you open this layout without saving the other layout, it does close everything from the old layout. So make sure you save layouts as you go. Comparing the text gives insights into what choices the translators were making. How did they translate verbs in certain tenses? What did they do when they came across hapax legomena? What did they do when they came across hapax legomena? Those are questions that scratch the surface of what we're able to find when utilizing the text comparison tool.